I would not only drive the truck, but I would drive all the vehicles onto and off of the truck, which is not as easy as it sounds.
Do you know what's stopping you from doing that one thing you've always wanted to do? You don't, because it doesn't exist. This is Josh Bauer, and no, it really doesn't exist.
This is going to be an ideally brief description of my, I guess you could say, career experience over the past year or so, and also just other things that I am doing at the moment. So I got my CDL finally in 2025. February is when I passed the road test. At the time, I was working at the Buffalo Airport as a ramp agent doing aircraft turnaround. Incredibly fun job. And I stayed there maybe 2 months afterwards. Even after I got my CDL, I stayed at the airport to learn a little bit more about the things that were required in order to do the second part of that job, which was being a load master, which is where you are given the responsibility of essentially being in control of the entire aircraft while it's on the ground, doing the paperwork for its weight and distribution and that sort of thing, pushing it out, marshalling it in and pushing it out with the pushback tug yourself. Very fun job. Anyway, after I kind of got that nailed down, I decided I was going to go make some more money by driving now that I had my CDL Class A. And so I started working for Cassins. It was a car hauler company based out of Niagara Falls. Would I say it was fun? It was certainly challenging. I never had to do it in the winter. So basically, I would drive the car haulers. A car hauler is a tractor trailer that hauls cars or pickup trucks or minivans or SUVs, etc. Any sort of little consumer vehicles, even like those Ford Transits, which are actually pretty big. Anyway, I would not only drive the truck, but I would drive all the vehicles onto and off of the truck, which is not as easy as it sounds. So it's not like a flatbed tractor trailer where you just drive the vehicle onto it and it's done. You have to there's like 10 different ramps, and they all move separately from each other depending on the kind of truck you have. And that's an additional complication you have to factor in, which is not all of those car hauler tractor trailers are the same design. Some of them, all the ramps are kind of attached to each other, and it just moves like there are multiple pivot points, but they all kind of stay connected to each other. And then there are other types where each platform actually is separate. So basically you have to memorize how to use different types of trucks. And it's not as easy as it sounds. There's like 20 different pins and levers that you have to understand what ramps they control, and you basically have to memorize the numbers. Okay, and then you have to actually drive the cars on and off. So I never had an issue with driving the cars on and off. Well, okay, I did. So with the pickup truck, there's a Chevy Silverado one time. It was very difficult to get it on the inside because you have with a Chevy Silverado, they're wider, obviously, than a typical car. And so there's maybe, if you're lucky, 1.5 inches on each side of the pickup truck between the side of the pickup truck I should say between the outside side of the pickup truck and the inside side of the tractor trailer, trailer walls. And they're not enclosed walls, but there are bars there. So now just imagine backing a pickup truck. It's one thing to even, for example, back it into a garage with that level of small room, Now imagine that the floor is not flat, there are ridges and stuff that you have to apply the gas pedal harder to get that back tire over those ridges. And then furthermore, imagine backing it uphill at a 25 Yeah, 25 is maybe 30, or maybe that's a little too much, degree angle. 25 to 30 degree angle. And you can't, and you keep in mind your passenger side mirror has to be folded in, so you can't look, to the right in your passenger side mirror to see how much clearance you have. If you want to see how much clearance you have on that side, you have to put the truck in park, climb over the passenger seat, and look out the window. So it's interesting. And then the cars are a little bit easier than the pickup trucks, but it was a job that overall I enjoyed. Let's see, I got motels and stuff like that paid for. So I didn't have a sleeper, meaning there was no bed inside the truck. I would just sleep at motels. Typically, my range, the distance I would travel would be to, sometimes I went to, obviously there were shorter trips like Syracuse, Rochester, Binghamton, stuff like that. And then I would go out to, where was it? It was in Vermont. We would go to Burlington. There was Deerfield and Greenfield sound familiar. A bunch of fields. And they were up north, so you'd have to go like through Springfield and then straight north. There was Red Roof Inn out there that I really liked. I got to know a couple different motels that probably I'll stay at again in the future, but let's see here. The job was fun. I liked it for the most part. It was in somewhat nice weather. I started it in April. That's when I left the airport, mid-April. And so the weather wasn't bad. There was no snow. The cold wasn't too bad. And so, when there's snow, it's a whole different question because, everything I described with the pickup truck, now try doing that with snow on a metal, or ice on a metal platform. You're driving backwards uphill with maybe an inch to an inch and a half clearance on each side with a slippery metal surface, and you're trying to give it a lot of gas to get the back tire over ridges and stuff. That's probably a recipe for disaster that I'm glad I didn't have to deal with in cold weather. But I went to Vermont, Massachusetts, not all the way out to Boston, but we went to I forget the name of the city. We went to Connecticut. I went to Connecticut, and then that was out east. And then we went down to New York City, Philadelphia. Those were probably more of my common trips, were New York City and Philadelphia. It was specifically New Jersey. I forget the name of it was Newark, I think. Well, we would go to the port of Newark, and then there was a terminal that was just outside of the Newark airport. We would go to Ohio, Warren. It was near Warren. I forget the exact name of the town, but it was near Warren, Ohio. Down to West Virginia, down to Maryland. So that was about as far as I would travel. A lot of time spent in Pennsylvania. So the travel was fun. I enjoyed driving. Driving wasn't too bad unless you get, because they have some old trucks, some new trucks, some old trucks. Usually I got like middle-ish, so like 2015, and that was fine. They were all manuals. They were all 10-speed stick shift. And I did enjoy driving the manual trucks. That was the only time, well, it wasn't the only time I've driven a manual for that job, but that was by far like the most experience I have driving a manual tractor trailer was working for Cassins. And I did enjoy shifting. Shifting was fun. And it was a great opportunity to listen to podcasts too. Like when I was actually loading and unloading the cars, it would take about roughly 2 hours to load a full truck of cars, and it would take probably an hour and a half to unload it. The only difference unloading is you don't have to be as careful putting it into place because it's already in place, so all you got to do is take it off the truck. Whereas when you're loading it up, you have to make sure it's perfectly in place to where it's supposed to be, and you got to get out and get back in and move it like a freaking inch every now and then. There were a couple times I almost had the cars a little too close to each other because they're all bumper to bumper. But I got pretty good at that job. I kind of got into a groove where I would just put my podcast in. I kind of had everything down by memory. It's the only thing that it's kind of not easy to do by memory is when you get a weird combination of vehicles. So depending on the vehicle's width and height, it's going to, and also length, it's going to, well, specifically length and height. you're going to have to rearrange it differently. Rearrange all of the cars actually differently on the truck, depending on the arrangement of vehicles that you have. Like if you have like 4 pickup trucks, I think you can fit 5 if you're lucky pickup trucks, like big pickup trucks on a tractor trailer. You can probably fit 5. But if we're talking like cars, you can fit like 10, right? So the number of vehicles you'll be able to fit on a truck is going to differ depending on what type of vehicles you have, and not only the number of vehicles, but where you put them. You know, if you can fit a car on one platform, a truck might have to take up that platform and half of the one in front of it. So it's just, that's something you have to get down. You know, sometimes you just have to call somebody who's been there longer and be like, hey, I have this assortment of vehicles. How do you set this up? So not everything can be learned 100% by memory within like the first couple months of that job. But for the most part, I got pretty good at it. It wasn't bad. I am glad that I wasn't doing it in the winter, but it wasn't a bad job. Now that said, it was definitely very involved, and there is ways to mess up like everywhere you turn. Like there's room for error just about everywhere. I mean, like I said, with even just backing vehicles on, I mean, what can go wrong? I mean, number one, you turn the steering wheel too far in one direction, or if you're not good at backing a vehicle up straight, like just a normal vehicle, not even talking about a tractor trailer, just a car. If you can't back a car up straight and you turn it too far to the left, turn the steering wheel too far to the left, well then the left side, you know, you're gonna scrape the car against the railings, like the bars on the side of the truck, and that's gonna be at best a paint job, and at worst you might need a new fairing for the car. So that's money. You know, one person apparently, when they got to the top rack of the truck, like they were putting the car all the way on top of the truck, and they just drove right off the front. Like, oops. Somehow they were fine and the car was fine. Well, I don't know that the car was completely fine, but it landed on all 4 tires somehow. This is just a story I was told by another driver. I mean, what else? Like, you have to strap the cars down properly. If you don't strap them down properly, they can fall off while you're driving. That's not nothing. You strap down all 4 tires in some situations. You will, I mean, technically, legally, you only have to strap down 2. I think they have to be, the 2 that you strap down have to be diagonal from each other, but I don't know that I would bet on that. I would do at least 3, but then per company policy, you have to strap down all 4, which makes sense because, you know, in case 2 fails. And there were situations, like there was this one spot in particular, where the straps always came loose on whichever tires were in that spot, and it's because the floor that they were strapped to, you know, the platform, it was not fixed. It was like movable, and it was adjustable by a lever, but it would adjust itself sometimes, and it would result in the strap becoming looser. So in a situation like that, it's good that the other 2 straps are there, right? And that you had all 4 straps on. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't bad. Listen, I like moving around. I like, you know, I guess it's kind of why I'm drawn to more physical jobs, is I like moving around and doing things, you know. So I enjoyed, you know, walking around. You gotta tighten this strap, you gotta walk over here, push this lever to move these platforms up and put these ramps in place so that you can drive the next car on. Get in the car, drive it up there while the top half of your body is out the window of the car so that you can see what's going on, because your mirrors are folded in so that the mirrors don't snap off when they hit the bars on the side of the truck. So, you know, it was a job. I enjoyed the physical aspect of it, and that's partially why I chose it. Was I didn't want to just sit and rot in the driver's seat of a truck for days on end, per se. So that is why I took that as my first job. And it paid pretty well, obviously. So they fired me in August-ish, I think early August. And what happened was I was driving in Connecticut, close to New Haven, if I remember correctly. And basically, so the tractor trailers are not enclosed. Like, all the cars on the back, specifically on the trailer and the tractor, there's like 2 that go above where you're driving, and then there's 3 that go on the trailer behind you that you're hauling. and it's not enclosed. So like if anything hits it from the outside, that damage goes straight to the car. So basically there were tree branches that were not trimmed properly by the town. It's supposed to be, I mean, when I say supposed to be, I guess I don't mean legally, because that's going to depend on the state and locally specific laws, which apparently were non-existent here. But they're supposed to be trimmed to like 13.6 at least, so that a tractor trailer can fit under them. Now, usually that doesn't matter. Like if it's, I don't know, 13.4 and you got some, when I say branches, I'm not talking about like, 5 inches in diameter. I'm talking like leaves and twig like thickness branches, like something that if it were a normal tractor trailer or just plow right through it, it doesn't matter. And you look in your mirror and you see some leaves falling on the pavement. It's not a big deal. But with a car, basically what it did to the cars, I drove under something like this, and you can't really tell. Like if it were, I don't know, 11 feet off the ground, then you would be able to easily tell, oh, I can't fit under that. I gotta like slow down and either just take it really, really slowly or go around it. But basically the tree, these little sticks and leaves from the tree branches, they were like at the height where it looked like it was probably fine, because most locations that do trim their tree branches to like 13.6, they do it like just above 13.6, like 13.7, and you have no choice but to drive. You can't stop for every one of these places where you're like, hey, that looks like it's a little close, because you'd be stopping like every, I don't know, if we're talking New York, if we're on a side road, like not on the highway, because the highways are fine, there's no trees anywhere near the highway, but if we're talking like a normal country road, I don't know, you'd be stopping like you'd always be stopped. Like it's just not practical if you think that it is just above you, but you're like, oh, I want to stop to be safe. I mean, you'd never reach your destination. That's just, it's laughable, the plausibility of having to do that. And so it's one of those situations where it's like, okay, it's probably fine. And then you drive under it, and I could see in my mirror like the tree branches were moving around and stuff behind me. So anyway, when I got to the dealership, I looked at the tops, and they were like, you could call them scuffs. I think they would be considered scratches, because when you like put your thumb over it, it doesn't come out. But it's not like, it wasn't dense or anything like that. But the problem was, I think it was requiring a new paint job on the roofs of, I think it was 4 of the 5 or 3 of the 5, whatever the case, vehicles that were on the top of the truck. So it was a lot of money and damages. I think it was like, based on what I remember, I think it was like $3,000 worth of new paint jobs on the cars on the top. And the company had like a threshold for, okay, after this amount of damages, don't even, you just fire the person and hire someone else in their place. Which, it is what it is. I get it. I mean, could I have done anything differently? I guess I probably should have consulted some other drivers that were, well, then again, the question is, would I have had a reason to? Because you don't know what you don't know, right? And I didn't know what I later learned to be the case, which was that Connecticut is notoriously horrible for low tree branches. And by this point, I had been in like basically every other state that I have been to in that job other than Connecticut, because Connecticut was one of the last ones that I went to, and well, this was why. But by this point, I had already been to New Jersey, Maryland, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Vermont, New York. Obviously, none of those were a problem for this. So I didn't know, okay, this is going to be my first trip into Connecticut. I better ask someone if the tree branches are going to be low, and if so, what route I should take. It just didn't occur to me as a problem, because it was not a problem in any other state I had been in. So, yeah, I mean, theoretically, I could have utilized somebody else's knowledge, because other people, I guess, had been prone to the same errors. It's not like I wasn't the first person to get fired for that, but I guess I just, yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky situation, because obviously I am responsible for making sure that the freight doesn't get damaged. So technically, of course, I was at fault, but the question is, what could I have done differently? I'm not really sure. But either way, after I got fired from Cassins, I think I was there like 4 months, like long enough to get the job done pretty well. Still not terribly long, like 4 months isn't that long. But after that, I contacted Vargo. They were another company that I had been considering before I even had my CDL. I had like a list of companies that I was considering working for. Vargo Trucking, they did like dump trucks, and they had a flatbed truck. So I was there for a couple months. I was just working there temporarily. I let them know when I started working there, like, hey, I am going to be looking for an over-the-road trucking job, but if you're looking for someone temporarily just in the summer to do some driving for you, I am all yours. And so he took me. I was delivering concrete and stuff to the Bills Stadium and delivering dirt to different residential customers and stuff. It was okay. Paid the bills. And then September comes. I get my TWIC card. I end up working for another company. Over-the-road step deck tractor trailers. This was like, don't get me wrong, Cassins was the first real tractor trailer job that I had. But this one is what I consider to be like the bulk of my experience with driving tractor trailers. I guess mostly because of the amount of time that I spent in the truck. This was a sleeper, so instead of being in motels, I would be in the truck sleeping in the bed that's inside the truck. Also because of the distance that I drove. I drove basically everywhere in the country. I believe I was with this truck at that company that I started working for in September that was based out of Oregon. I drove to every state in the United States, continental United States, except for 3. Those 3 would have been Montana, Alabama, well, let me rephrase it. Between Cassins and this new job, I was in every continental state except for 3. Because, for example, with the second job, I didn't go to Delaware, but I did go to Delaware for Cassins. Montana, Alabama. Man, what was the third one? Well, I did go to Florida, but I didn't go there in the truck. I went there by plane, so that doesn't count. That was like a vacation. I don't know. Montana, Alabama, and I think there was one more. But anyway, I was in every other continental state, so like 43, 45, whatever, with that truck. I was all over the place. Probably the most frequent state that I went to was Oklahoma, and it's kind of confusing because there's like, when you think of Oklahoma, there's like nothing there. But when I was on the West Coast, California, Oregon, Nevada, and I wanted to come back to Buffalo, usually my dispatcher would get me like a middle load in Oklahoma. They would send me like from California to Oklahoma. Then one time I think I got a load from Oklahoma right back to New York, which was pretty cool. I mean, usually they don't do, almost always, you don't find a load that goes straight from West Coast to East Coast. I don't think I ever had one anyway. I mean, they exist, obviously, and people take them, but not in this particular job that I had with this dispatcher and this, set of rules that the dispatcher had to follow because they had to accept a certain rate per mile or higher. But with that being said, the second best you can get to that is just one stop in between. So like, I was doing a lot of driving. Now, this was a step deck, so I would load all sorts of things. I would have to strap it down and or chain it down and then tarp it down. The worst part of this job would have been the tarping. I absolutely hated the tarping. But you got $100 extra from the company whenever you had to tarp it. So it was, I guess, bittersweet, It was a 1099 job, so there was no benefits, really, no health insurance, nothing like that. No matched retirements, nothing like that. But it paid quite a bit. I think the pay on this was around, there's a deposit that I was paying out of $250 a month until it got to $2,500, but not including that because that was still technically my money. It was around $2,000 a week, which would be 52, just over 100,000, like 104,000 if you multiply 52 times 2,000. That's before taxes. So the money was good. Eventually, this was not terribly long ago, somewhat recently, the truck that I was driving, it had like engine issues and a bunch of other issues with it. And so it went in the shop, and that was like their last truck that they did not have a driver in, and it was the one that I was previously driving. And so I was out of work for like, I don't even know, something like a month. And I would have continued driving with them if they had gotten the truck fixed and put me back in it. But the truck was, I guess, just sitting in the shop for that whole time. I don't know if they just were dragging their feet or if it was really, the engine was really that messed up to where it was taking that long to fix. But whatever the problem, or whatever the case, I was basically out of work for that. It was like a month before I decided to do something else. Maybe like 3 weeks. So after that, I was like, okay, well, I like driving. I enjoyed all the time that I was driving for both of those jobs. But I really missed home. Like every time I would come home for like 5 or 6 days at a time every month. I would get like 5 or 6 days in a row home for the amount of time that I was working there at that step deck job. And, I would try to make best use of that time when I was home. But the problem is after like, I don't want to say sleeping in, but just having a variable sleep schedule for the past 3 weeks, and I get home to Buffalo, I just crash in my own bed and I'm like, I just want to enjoy this. And I end up just being really lazy and not really doing anything. Like I would go to some networking events and I would, enjoy myself. But other than that, like I wasn't being very productive. My sleep schedule was off. I enjoyed the first couple days in my own bed, but then like the next 4 days after that, I would almost be like bored, like I had nothing to do and be like, okay, I want to get driving again. And it was like, the reason I wanted to start driving again, I mean, I do enjoy driving, but it wasn't because it's like, oh, I really miss driving, I want to get back to driving. It was because I legitimately felt like I had nothing to do at home. And that wasn't because I didn't have anything to do at home. It was just because my whole circadian rhythm, I think, was just out of alignment. I don't know if it makes sense to a listener how those two things are correlated, but for one reason or another, and regardless of the exact causes of it, my life was just completely variable and like off the rails and not manageable. And I don't know, I'm someone who likes to have a routine. I'm someone who likes to have, daily consistency in certain ways. And I'm also obviously flexible on it. I mean, you can't have an OTR truck driver that wants a strict daily routine, obviously. So I was quite flexible on that desire. And I was able to kind of overrule that desire, but that doesn't mean it didn't still exist. And, I missed being able to be home and have a set schedule. And one of the things that was more important to me was making progress on some of the side projects that I had going on. So at the time, I was trying to just manage everything remotely. I had this guy, I appreciate him, who made some deliveries for me. I paid him like $100 to drive to a town and back. I have another guy who's essentially he's like a business partner to me with my chess sets, and what he does is he produces them, and I pay him by the set that he makes. He's got one of my 3D printers that he uses, and so I've got a little remote operation that I'm trying to manage while on the road, and it's possible, but it's not ideal. And the progress, things aren't moving as quickly in some ways as I would like them to, and specifically in regards to Price Clicker. Like, there's only so much I can do when I'm driving, obviously. And then I have like maybe, if I am very intentional on how I utilize my non-driving time, I have maybe an hour or two per day, but in reality, that doesn't even get utilized. And if I do have that free time, it just doesn't really go to my side projects that I'm trying to build. And even if I were try to put that hour a day towards a side project, the amount, context isn't just something that, AI has to have in order to do its job properly. It's something that humans have to have in order to do their job properly. And if you are chopping a large, difficult, complicated task with high mental involvement up into a bunch of tiny little pieces, there's going to be lost context each time you try to pick that task back up where you left it off. And it's just going to be a pain. So I wanted, and here's another thing, all the money I was making, it seemed to go right back out the window. Now granted, there was one month I spent like $8,000 in a month on a bunch of business equipment, between laser cutters and a bunch of well, not a bunch of, but a couple more 3D printers and a paper folder. The paper folder, it was like some old industrial thing, cost $400. That itself wasn't terribly expensive, but like, you know, a bunch of little $400 and $500 things add up. And a bunch of supplies. I spent like, I don't know, $500, $600 in supplies in that month for the chess sets. And it's like, so all my money is going right back out the window. Now granted, those were all productive uses for it, in my opinion, and things that if I am to get these projects and businesses off the ground, they do require investment. Oh yeah, I spent $1,000 on cursor usage fees. I forgot about that. I was using cursor so much I spent $1,000 on it over the period of like 1.5 months. With all that said, it's like I got this job so that I could have a lot of money, and I was making a lot of money, but it was going right back out the window. And granted, it was for productive uses, but nonetheless still going right back out the window. So I am now, you know, I was now at a spot where I was like, okay, I have to make a decision. I basically, I mean, I wasn't fired from this job, but it was almost as if I were, right? Because the truck is in a shop and they have no work for me. It's a 1099 job, contractor job. So it's like, okay, act as if you just got fired. Now the question is, what do you want to do from here? Do you want to find another driving job and start doing the same thing again? Or do you want to maybe switch it up and give yourself some more home time? So I decided I wanted to come back to Buffalo. And I actually took the job back at the airport, which still pays ridiculously low, but I have a little bit different of an out this time, which is, first of all, I still have my CDL, as opposed to last time. This time, not only do I have my CDL, but I've got a year's worth of driving experience with car haulers, flatbed, and step deck. I also have my TWIC card. I also have now my hazmat, and I have doubles and triples endorsement, and I have a tow truck endorsement, although I will never be a tow truck driver, but hell, why not just get the endorsement, right? So I've got all that, and the year's experience is not nothing, because a lot of people cap it at that. And I've got good references. So I mean, the last job would be a good reference, and Vargo would be a good reference. Even Castins, I've the, what do you call it? The reason they fired me was a corporate monetary threshold. All the people that were there actually liked me. So I think the guy, the dispatcher would probably give me a reference. Terminal manager would definitely give me a reference. So I've got a bunch of good references. I've got a year's worth of experience, and I've got a bunch of endorsements, hazmat, etc. that I didn't have before. TWIC card. I'll have my FAST soon. I have a passport now, so I can go to Canada, all that stuff. So like, I can go back anytime I want if I have to for the money, but I would prefer to lock myself into a consistent routine, at least for now. And I want to get price clicker and corner tactics off the ground, because it's just something that I was not able to effectively manage from a distance, and it's because I wasn't putting in the time that's required to build those things. And, you know, between Castins and the second driving job, it's one of those things where it's like, it gets annoying after a while. It's like, let me put it this way. The amount of effort that it takes to find a new job is not terrible, but it is annoying. It's like, okay, I found Castins. Okay, I got fired from Castins. Okay, I found this second job. Okay, well now the truck that I was driving is dead in action and missing in action, and now I basically, unless I just want to wait for it to come back, and I have no idea how long that's going to be, because I notoriously did not communicate on that, I am basically going to have to find a new job. It's like, how many times am I going to have to, it's I don't know. It was a little bit, this whole year was a little bit enlightening to me in the sense that, I mean, previous to this, I had assumed that, okay, Josh, you're trying all these little side projects and they're not really doing it for you. What you got to do is you got to get a real job and make some real money that way. And I did earn a decent amount of money. I'm not going to discount that. But it makes you think about whether employment is what you want your life's source of income to be. And obviously I knew before any of this that the answer to that for me was no. But I guess I'm thinking more in terms of a short-term, what am I actually going to do about it sense, as opposed to a long-term dream of, oh, I would love to someday own a business. Yay. Okay, but how are you actually going to do that? Because if we're sitting in a truck driving, like, don't get me wrong, I like driving, but you're never home. You are basically neglecting a lot of your responsibilities when it comes to the businesses that you're trying to, like, for example, the production of the chess sets. Like, that's an active responsibility that I need to be involved in. Like, the printers break down. There are certain issues, other issues with the design files not being compatible, like specifically for the felt. The design files have to be compatible with a laser cutter. It's like a bunch of stuff I have to actively be on top of if I want these businesses to succeed. And yes, I have money, but money doesn't solve, I have money from the driving, but money doesn't solve all the problems of a startup business. You can't just throw money at it and hope that it fixes itself. Eventually you can get to a point, hopefully, where you can replace yourself as the driving force of the business, and that's when you start taking the profit from the business and throwing it back into the operations. And if you have employees that are well trained, then yes, eventually you can remove yourself from the equation. But I am not at a point where I can do that, especially with any of the stuff I'm trying to build. And so I basically, during the time I had off of, before I even decided to lock it in and go back to the airport, when I just had the month or so off, I built up Price Clicker to a huge extent. There was one point I spent just below 100 hours in a week on building the Price Clicker website. And when I say the website, I don't mean the HTML file that you see when you go to priceclicker.com. I mean like the whole back-end application, because it's a software as a service application. You log in, you've got dashboard, you've got leads, all that stuff. It was the first time I've ever built a website with a login. And we're not talking like, oh yeah, he went to Square or Wix and did a website with a login. No, I built it from scratch. First time I've ever built a website with a login from scratch. Should clarify that. It was with AI, but still something I've never done before. Like, I had to learn the whole infrastructure. I had to get the AI can't do everything for you, by the way, in case, like, AI is super helpful and I wouldn't have been able to do this without AI, but AI cannot do everything for you. Like, you have to learn the infrastructure. What do you need? You need a database. You need, I don't even remember anymore what it's called. I did this a few months ago, but the auth, next auth, I think it's called. You have to set up the authorization for the login. You have to have the application hosted on a type of server that can actually run your application. And I didn't do this on like some, some sort of service that's like all-inclusive and does that all for you. I did it on a standard shared hosting service. So all that said, like, a large time requirement is needed for this sort of thing, and I spent a lot of time on it during that month that I was just not doing anything in terms of employment. And I also really pushed almost to the finish line the board game that I've been working on since 2017. I did a whole redesign of the cards. I did a whole redesign of the board. In fact, I've since ordered 3 prototypes of the board, and it's actually pretty amazing. It's like a material of a mouse pad, but it's huge. It's what's the exact dimensions? I think 20 by 30? No, yeah, 20 by 30, if I'm not mistaken. It's huge, and it smells weird, but it feels amazing, and it looks amazing. So now that board game's Military versus Economy is almost to the finish line. as soon as that's done, I still have to order prototypes of the cards and currency and 3D print the pieces myself and that sort of thing. But as soon as I have a prototype, I'm going to start selling it online. And now I have a, GS1 barcode for it, so I'll be able to theoretically sell it in stores too. I still have to work out the, I was going to do shrink wrapping, and there's a place locally in Buffalo that would have shrink wrapped them for me. But I'm considering just doing like those little sticky tabs that you just put on the bottom of the box to hold it together. It will be, by the way, the largest board game box that I personally have ever seen. I forget the exact dimensions of it. They're written on a sheet of paper in my house, but it's like wider, taller, and longer than a Monopoly board or Monopoly box. So it's going to be a big box. And for that reason, it's going to be more difficult to convince stores to have it on their shelves just because it takes up more space. But it is going to have a higher sticker price, so that might make up for it. I don't know. We'll see. I'll have to get some social proof for it before I can even try to put it in store. But either way, I'm excited about that, for Swigler Gaming. And that, both Swigler and Price Clicker, though I made a lot of progress on those during the time I was off. Now I'm working at the airport again. The thing I like about the airport is it's part-time, so I still have a ton of time to myself to continue working on these things. That provides me enough money, like the airport job provides me enough money to keep the lights on, figuratively speaking, and if I need more money, I've got like a couple other side avenues I can go and do that on an emergency basis if needed. But basically what I'm forcing to do is I'm intentionally restricting the amount of money that comes in order to motivate me to get these businesses off the ground. So I'm like applying some financial pressure to me, because if I'm sitting here with like $2,000 a week coming in, yes, I have the theoretical philosophical motivation just out of, wanting to do something with my life to create some cool business ideas and manifest them, but I don't have a financial incentive to do so. It's like I don't really need the money. But if I'm intentionally restraining myself, and by the way, I like this job at the airport. It's like incredibly fun. So, I guess I took a 180-degree turn, to be quite honest. And I guess that's something it's not the first time I've done a 180-degree turn, and I think maybe that's just because I like a little bit of variety. But, I don't think I'm going to go back to driving immediately. I could if I had to, and I could if I wanted to. And actually, I've been, building a backup roster in case I do decide to. I'll run down the list, and a couple companies, JB Hunt has actually called me out of the blue and be like, hey, you applied here before. We want you to come work for us. It's like, hey, kind of like my job, but I will keep you in mind. It's definitely, there's definitely no shortage of driving work. Coca-Cola, I know, is hiring. They pay $28 an hour. NOCO is like a hazmat job, which I now have my hazmat. They do tankers and stuff, and they're $30 an hour. So I believe those were on the low ends. I don't know. But this is I don't want to say it's the perfect scenario, because it's not the perfect scenario, but I'm highly satisfied, and it's by choice, right? I'm satisfied with the situation that I put myself back into, which is I work a job that I really like. It pays enough to keep the lights on, but not enough for me to be living extravagantly. And if I want to be able to do that, Josh, then why don't you finish your damn business and get some paid clients? I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things. I think, hey, by the way, Price Clicker, I think I'm really passionate about this because it's, it's one of those things where if I get mad at something personally, then I'm a little bit more mentally engaged with the topic. So it's, all the things that I work on they're things that I personally like discussing or thinking about, or it's a problem that I personally have been frustrated by and personally want to solve. It's just how I spend my time. I don't really spend if I see an opportunity, for example, there are plenty of quote-unquote opportunities out there that could make you money. If I wanted to do software as a service just to make money, there are hundreds of applications that I could choose to become involved in. I decided to do something that I personally saw as a problem and that I thought I could solve. And there's a lot of software solutions that do all sorts of pricing and invoicing software and that sort of thing. There's like no shortage of invoicing software solutions out there on the internet. And by the way, ones that are cheaper than what I offer. But the thing about what I offer is it is a very specific solution that solves a very specific problem, whereas there are a ton of these software companies that provide you web design, they provide you invoicing, they provide you the ability to accept payments. They provide basically the whole suite of products. Even NetSuite. Now, I don't know if NetSuite provides like the exact quote generator type thing that I have, but I do know that I've done a significant amount of research on my competitors, or I should say future competitors, as my service is not technically in the game yet, but there are some of them that do provide a very similar product to what I am putting out there, but they also provide 80 other things, right? And so, think of like Google. I mean, obviously Google isn't providing the solution that I am, but think of that type of company. There are other companies that are similar to Google in the sense that they have like, 70, 80 other things that they are involved in. Like you look at NetSuite. I don't even know all of what NetSuite does, but they do I know they're involved in AI. They're involved with CRMs, right? Customer relationship management softwares. And because they are involved in so many things, they're not putting the attention necessary, in my opinion, to solve specific problems. So Price Clicker is intended to solve one specific problem, and that is making it easier for service-based businesses to be more transparent about the pricing of services they offer, even when that pricing involves complex variables, or at least multiple variables. Like, I don't know, if I were to call someone and say, hey, how much would it cost for you to replace my roof? Or, hey, I'm looking for an accountant. I see you have an accountant there. How much is it going to cost for me to retain you as my accountant? These are questions that do not have a unilateral single answer, right? The answer is going to depend on a couple things. So, for example, what's the square footage of roof? How old is the roof? How many layers of shingles are on the roof? That sort of thing. And if you can just type that information into a form and get an automatic quote, also maybe dependent on the location of your house, if it's, within 50 miles, maybe you get this price per mile added onto it. Within 100 miles, this price per mile. Different factors, right? There's just a number of different factors. I'm not a roofer, so I don't know all the different factors that go into that. But it's that sort of thing. It's like we can give your service-based business a way for customers to get an instant and automatically generated quote on the cost of your service tailored to their specific circumstances. And when they do that, they're going to be more likely to convert, is the word that they typically use in the industry. They're going to be more likely to actually buy your service if they know how much it costs, especially if we're talking about someone who either wants it done quickly and they don't have time to wait for a bunch of people to get back to them a week later with a quote, or if we're talking about someone who just is a little bit more introverted and they don't want to have to call 50 different people to find the one who's going to have a price that's within their budget. This is one of those things that it increases conversion rates. It also is just, in my opinion, it's just better practice to have prices on your website. And I understand some people can't do it because there are multiple variables that go into determining the price of their service, but that's what this product is looking to solve. So it's one of those things, I personally would get annoyed going onto a website and wanting something and it says reach out for a quote. It's like, okay, especially for things that don't have that variable-based pricing, stuff that this form or this service would not even help them. They're just not putting the pricing on their website because they're stupid people. Those are the ones I really hate. That really makes me upset. It's like, why are we hiding the pricing? Why are we being stupid? Like, your website says like 50,000 other things about you except the only thing that matters, which is how much does your service actually cost. Okay, so yeah, with that said, I'm providing a very convenient way for people to solve this problem from, by the way, a consumer's perspective, me being the consumer going to your website and wondering why you thought it was so important to hide your pricing that you decided to just lose a customer. Because I'm not calling you to figure out how much something costs that should be on your website. I'm going to go find someplace that already says that. Because if you have a website, what the hell is the point in it if you're not going to display the important information that is critical for buyers to have in order to decide whether or not they're going to choose you? Okay, so that's what Price Clicker is for. PriceClicker.com. And these are things, like I said before, the board game, I was looking at Risk. I was playing Risk when I was 14 years old, and I was saying, why does this game not have money in it? So I would take Risk and I would take Monopoly money and I would play Risk with Monopoly money. You buy military bases and you buy cities and you buy strongholds. The cities give you a return on investment. The military bases give you troops per turn. This seems obvious. Like, why has this not been invented yet? And so I was 14 when I was doing this, and this is why the board game Military versus Economy came along. Okay, everything I do is it's because I see a problem that I think should be fixed, and I fix it myself. So these are things I like doing. So, like I was saying, I could not be, in my opinion, in a better self-induced situation than I currently put myself in. I'm tighter financially because when I was making a whole bunch of money, I had subscribed to a bunch of stuff that I could afford at the time. And then when I cut my income, I had to cut a bunch of those things. For example, what are we talking about? Let's see. Give me an example. What have I cut recently? Okay. Long-term disability insurance. It was like $300 a month or something. It was like midterm. I don't remember how many. I don't even remember exactly what the details of it were. I was paying like $300 a month for that. Basically, if I'm in like a accident in the truck, okay, now I'm going to have a source of income outside of my ability to do any work for a certain amount of time. It's okay, that's cool, $300 a month. Risk mitigation, right? Well, now, first of all, I'm not driving, so I don't even need it as much. Second of all, I'm not making an amount of money to where I can blow $300 a month on something that doesn't even have an immediate financial return. So that had to go. A couple other little, I guess you could say, just like things that typically you would think I'm crazy for having. So I had to get rid of some of that stuff. But basically, I'm constraining myself more financially. So that's the worst part of this setup. To mitigate that, I could solve that problem in an instant if I wanted to, but I really want to just force myself to try to. And the way I could solve it is by going back to another driving job. But I really want to force myself, not force myself, but at least set up circumstances that are conducive to me making more progress with these businesses, Price Clicker and Corner Tactics specifically, and Swiggler Gaming. Realistically, I've already done 90% of what needs to be done with Swiggler. I spent a ton of time on that within the last couple months. So, which is the board game, Military versus Economy. Swiggler Gaming is the brand for that. But I want to set up a situation where I am more easily able to push those things to the finish line. Corner Tactics, the website's been up forever, and technically you can buy a set, but it would be made on demand. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to have inventory. I want to have inventory in stock that I can put in display cases and give, or at least donate, or maybe on consignment to certain coffee shops and stuff with a QR code next to it where people can buy it online. I really want to go full throttle on this stuff, and it's just not possible to do when I have no time to invest in it because I'm driving basically the entirety of my time, and then when I do get home, for some reason I'm just lazy and don't feel like doing anything, and it's caused by a whatever messed up sleep schedule I have. And I don't know, it's just, it's not even because I can't blame it all on the sleep schedule from when I'm driving. The reason that when I would get home for the week-ish out of the month that I wouldn't feel like doing anything, I think it was just a disturbance in my routine. It's like I'm so used to driving all the time that when I get home, I don't actually know what to do with that. And that's it just makes it a little bit more difficult for me to use that time effectively. So now we are back in a routine. Now we have set it up to where I'm actually going to some social events and things of that nature, which I was a complete recluse when I was driving, obviously, as you would expect. I liked my podcasts, and my podcasts were good and everything, but outside of podcasts, and maybe talking to the receivers that you see whenever you go to a new warehouse or something to drop something off, you're by yourself all the time, which I don't know, I guess I would call myself an introvert, but, I was about to say as an introvert. I'm like, I'm like a mix of both, because, like, I'm totally fine being myself a majority of the time, but then I also enjoy hanging out with people and interacting with people. So it's definitely like I'm a selective introvert. I don't know how to explain it, but I liked the driving. But I also really like being back home where I can get up at the same time every day and go to work and doing something that I really enjoy doing. Like I said, I didn't mind driving, but I love playing with the planes. Playing with the aircraft is super fun. Being around airplane. I want to be a pilot eventually, so helicopter pilot. So it's something that I just enjoy being around aviation as a whole. So, working at the airport, coming back, still having, 2/3, a half of the day to work with that I can actually do something productive. I have a lot more paper systems in place than I did before. It used to be just that all my methods of accountability, most of my methods anyway of accountability, were in Google Tasks and Google Calendar. And now I'm doing a lot more on paper, which is not really very possible to, it's not easy to do in a truck, but when you have your whole desk and your whole office, it's easy to keep yourself accountable on paper. Like, okay, these are the 5 tasks that I want to get done today. It's on paper now. It's like a lot harder for me to pretend, I'm just going to drag this task from today to tomorrow and pretend that I didn't originally want to do it today. Nope, Josh, that's not how it works. You have a piece of paper written in pen on it, the date, with a date written on it in pen, right? That has 5 tasks that you told yourself you want to complete today in pen, not erasable, right? Which means you're more accountable to it. So I have better accountability. I have a better sleep schedule, and I'm doing something that I enjoy. It pays me enough to keep the lights on, and I now have enough time. See, at the end of the day, it comes back to time. I have enough time to enjoy my life a little bit more than when I was driving. Like I said, it's not that I didn't enjoy driving, but like I have a life again, you know what I mean? And I have the time to make progress on these business ideas, put more time into that, and I have more time just to have a normal life. And going back to the money, it's like, okay, lifestyle inflation. Like, yes, I was making more money when I had this hardcore job, putting all my time into it, but all that money was going right back out the window. Yes, you can make a case that it was going out the window towards things that were productive, quote unquote, but nonetheless, it was still going back out the window. And once I was done with it all, I didn't really have any money. I did a shit job at saving any money. So it's one. Now, granted, you could just try to, fix that problem directly, cut down all the expenses, but keep the high-paying job and change that habit and just save a bunch of money. I acknowledge that is an alternative solution that I could have decided to pursue, but I don't know. I was stuck at a crossroads anyway. I would have kept driving if that were my most easy option, but because of the most recent situation I was in where I basically had to find another job anyway, it's like, okay, well, I'm already having to do this, and I'm already having to find a new job, so now it's going to be easier to maybe switch it up again, and in a way I almost kind of felt like it was the universe kind of telling me, like, take a break from this for a while. You know what I mean? You got fired once, and then on the second occasion you didn't get fired, but the same effect, like you have to go find a new job. It's like, okay, I'm going to switch it up a little bit and see if we can come back to what I was trying to do before. I almost consider it like a rotating pattern, right? Like, okay, you're going to do this and you're going to do that, then you're going to come back and try to do this again. Oh, it didn't work. Well, you're going to try to do that again. But I also, another note I'm thinking about, because I have all these little interesting side quests. Maybe someday what it would be like to be on a ship, like in the ocean, for just months at a time. I don't know, but that's another story for another day. All right, this was supposed to be short, but good luck with that. I don't know. I don't think this was really that short. Probably like half an hour or something. I'm going to cut it off with this, and I'm going to work on Price Clicker for like the remainder of this day, which will be the first time in like Honestly, a couple weeks at least that I have spent more than like 2 consecutive hours on Price Clicker, so hopefully it's going to be productive. I have like 8 hours left in the day, so we'll see what I'm able to get done. I would love to finish up the ability for prospects to submit payment directly through the form, because I've been working on connecting that with Stripe. So we're going to see if I can get that done today, and if not, I'll get it done sometime within the next couple days, and I will be looking forward to whatever progress I may or may not make within that time period.